I stared at my phone screen in complete disbelief. 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, and Jessica had just sent me the most outrageous text of my life. Your apartment is closer to the airport. I'm dropping off my 3 kids for 2 weeks. Brian surprised me with Bora Bora. My fingers trembled as I typed back, I'm not home. Her instant reply made my blood run cold. Mom has your spare key. She's letting us in. 3 children, 2 weeks, 0 notice. I realized this wasn't a request. It was a declaration. The rage that flooded through my veins felt familiar, like an old wound reopening. I pushed back from my desk, my software development project forgotten, and started pacing my downtown Chicago apartment. This was Jessica all over again. The same sister who had steamrolled through my life for 32 years, taking whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted it. My mind raced back to our childhood in suburban Milwaukee. Jessica, 3 years older, had perfected the art of manipulation before I'd learned to tie my shoes. When we were kids, she'd borrow my birthday money and never return it. When I complained to our parents, she'd cry and claim I was being selfish. Mom would always side with her, saying I needed to be more generous with family. The pattern continued through high school. Jessica would use my car without asking, returning it with an empty gas tank and mysterious dents. She'd raid my closet for dates, stretching out my favorite shirts until they looked like tents. When I got angry, she'd accuse me of being possessive and materialistic. College brought new levels of betrayal. Jessica had sabotaged my relationship with my first serious girlfriend, Amanda, by telling her I was emotionally unavailable and too focused on computers. She'd stolen my research paper ideas for her communications classes, always claiming great minds think alike when confronted with the similarities. But this latest stunt felt different. This was my sanctuary being invaded. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through Jessica's Instagram feed, something I rarely did, because it always left me feeling frustrated. What I found made my stomach churn. 3 weeks ago, she'd posted a cryptic message, planning something special. Stay tuned. 2 weeks ago, sometimes the best surprises take careful coordination. 1 week ago, Bora Bora, here we come. Eventually. This wasn't Brian's surprise at all. Jessica had orchestrated this entire trip herself and was using me as her unpaid childcare solution. I called my best friend Marcus, the only person who truly understood my family dynamics. He answered on the second ring. Phoenix dude, it's almost 11. What's wrong? Jessica just informed me, not asked informed me, that she's dropping off Chloe Mason and Riley at my apartment for 2 weeks while she gallivants off to Bora Bora. Marcus groaned. Please tell me you're calling to ask for bail money after you murdered her. I'm calling because I need to make sure I'm not crazy. This is completely unacceptable, right? Completely unacceptable doesn't begin to cover it. Phoenix, you live in a 1-bedroom luxury apartment downtown. You work 70-hour weeks. You don't have kids. Where exactly does she expect them to sleep on your kitchen counter? He was right. My apartment was my pride and joy, the culmination of years of 60-hour work weeks and careful financial planning. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, the custom-built home office where I could code in peace the minimalist design that reflected my need for order and tranquility. It was perfect for a single professional, completely inappropriate for 3 children ranging from 6 to 12 years old. Marcus, she's done this my entire life. Remember when she crashed at my place during her divorce proceedings 2 years ago? You mean when she stayed for 4 months, maxed out your Netflix account with kids' shows, and left Cheerio crumbs ground into your hardwood floors? Exactly. And she never offered to pay utilities or even groceries. When I asked her to contribute something, anything, she accused me of charging family rent. The more I talked, the angrier I became. Jessica had borrowed $3,000 from me last Christmas, claiming she needed it for the kids' gifts. I'd never seen a penny back. She'd used my credit card information to order food delivery to her house multiple times, always promising to reimburse me next payday. She'd even had the audacity to list me as a reference for a rental application, without asking, forcing me to awkwardly explain to a stranger that I couldn't recommend my own sister as a tenant. Phoenix, you need to stop being her safety net. What's the worst thing that happens if you say no? She tells Mom I'm abandoning family. Mom guilts me into compliance. The kids get hurt because their parents are selfish idiots. And what happens if you say yes? I paused, really thinking about it for the first time. I lose 2 weeks of my life. I probably lose my biggest client because I can't work with 3 kids underfoot. I spend hundreds of dollars on food and entertainment I can't afford. My apartment gets destroyed. And Jessica learns that she can walk all over me whenever she wants. There's your answer. After hanging up with Marcus, I sat in my leather desk chair and really looked around my space. Every piece of furniture had been carefully chosen, every book properly shelved, every surface clean and organized. This was my refuge from the chaos of the world, and I'd spent years creating it exactly the way I wanted. But beyond the practical concerns, something deeper was bothering me. Jessica's text wasn't just presumptuous. It was cruel. She knew I struggled with boundaries. She knew I had a hard time saying no to family. And she was exploiting that knowledge to manipulate me into compliance. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Carlos, my building's night doorman. We'd developed a friendly relationship over the 3 years I'd lived here. He was a former Marine, about 50 years old, with a no-nonsense attitude that I respected. Carlos, it's Phoenix in 12B. I need a huge favor, and I'm willing to pay for your trouble. What's going on, Phoenix? I explained the situation, and Carlos listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So your sister is planning to dump 3 kids on you without permission, using your mother's copy of your key to break into your apartment. That's exactly what's happening. And you want me to prevent this? I want you to follow building policy about unauthorized visitors. If someone shows up claiming they have a right to enter my apartment, but I haven't authorized it, you have every right to refuse them entry. Phoenix, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen every kind of family drama you can imagine. But what your sister is planning, that's not family drama. That's harassment. Carlos agreed to help, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in my adult life, I was going to stand up to Jessica's manipulation instead of enabling it. But I wasn't done yet. I called an emergency locksmith service willing to pay the after-hours premium to change my locks immediately. If Jessica thought she could use Mom's key to invade my space, she was about to learn otherwise. As I waited for the locksmith, I did some quick math. 2 weeks with 3 kids would cost me at least $1,000 in food alone. Add entertainment, possible babysitting costs, if I needed to work, and the stress of managing children I wasn't prepared for. And Jessica was essentially demanding I donate 2 weeks of my life and a month's worth of discretionary income for her vacation convenience. The locksmith arrived at midnight, a grizzled guy named Tony, who didn't seem fazed by the late hour or the family drama I briefly explained. Let me guess, he said as he worked on my front door. Sister thinks she can use Mommy's key to dump her kids whenever she wants. How did you know? Buddy, I've changed locks for this exact reason at least a dozen times. Family members who think being related gives them property rights. You're doing the smart thing. By 1 a.m., I had new locks, and Carlos had detailed instructions about Jessica's expected arrival. I also set up my phone to record video, wanting documentation of whatever confrontation was coming. As I finally tried to get some sleep, one thought kept circling through my mind. Why had it taken me 32 years to stand up for myself? And why did it feel so terrifying and liberating at the same time? I woke up Friday morning with a strange sense of clarity. After years of being Jessica's doormat, I was finally fighting back. But as I made my morning coffee, a nagging thought occurred to me. How had Jessica afforded a trip to Bora Bora in the first place? Brian worked as a middle manager at an insurance company, decent money, but nothing extravagant. Jessica did part-time bookkeeping for small businesses, which barely covered her shopping addiction. They lived in a nice suburban house, but they were always complaining about money, always finding excuses not to pay back loans or contribute to family gifts. I decided to do some investigating. I called my Aunt Margaret, my mom's sister, who had always been the family's informal financial advisor. She was an early riser, usually up by 6 a.m. for her power walks. "Phoenix, how lovely to hear from you, dear. How are things?" "Actually, Aunt Margaret, I'm calling about something concerning. Has Jessica borrowed money from you recently?" The pause was so long I thought the call had dropped. "Phoenix, sweetie, why are you asking?" "Because she's planning a 2-week vacation to Bora Bora, and I'm trying to figure out how she's financing it." "Oh dear. Oh, Phoenix, I think there's been a misunderstanding." My stomach dropped. "What kind of misunderstanding?" "Jessica called me last month. She was crying, saying you'd had a medical emergency and needed $800 immediately for treatment your insurance wouldn't cover. She said you were too proud to ask for help yourself, but that you'd pay me back as soon as your next paycheck cleared." I nearly dropped my phone. "Aunt Margaret, I haven't had any medical emergencies. I haven't needed to borrow money from anyone." The silence stretched between us, and I could practically hear Margaret's world shifting. "She used your name to borrow money from me. For her vacation." "It looks that way." That's fraud, Phoenix. That's identity theft." I spent the next hour on the phone with various family members, and the picture that emerged was devastating. Jessica had borrowed $600 from cousin David, claiming I needed help with car repairs. She'd gotten $400 from Uncle Robert, saying I was behind on rent after a work slowdown. From Great Aunt Susan, another $500 for what she claimed were my outstanding medical bills. In total, Jessica had fraudulently obtained nearly $3,000, using my name and reputation. No wonder she could afford Bora Bora. She'd financed it by systematically lying to our extended family. But the financial fraud was just the beginning. As I dug deeper, I discovered Jessica had been using my identity in other ways. She'd applied for store credit cards, using my name as a reference. She'd told her landlord that I was her co-signer when she wasn't. She'd even given my name and phone number to collection agencies when they called about her debts, claiming I was her financial advisor and would handle payment arrangements. I felt physically sick. For years, I'd wondered why some family members seemed distant at gatherings, why conversations sometimes grew awkward when money topics came up. I'd assumed they thought I was antisocial or too focused on work. In reality, they thought I was the kind of person who borrowed money from elderly relatives and never paid it back. I called Marcus again. "She's been using my name to defraud the family for at least 6 months, maybe longer." "Jesus, Phoenix, that's not just selfish sister behavior, that's criminal." "I know, and the worst part is, I can't prove I didn't authorize it. She's family. She knows enough personal details about my life to make the stories believable. Who's going to doubt that I might need help with medical bills or car repairs?" "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to let her show up tonight expecting to dump her kids, and I'm going to let Carlos explain that she's not welcome in my building. Then, I'm going to confront her with the evidence of her fraud." Phoenix, be careful. When manipulative people get cornered, they escalate. Marcus was right, but I was past the point of worrying about Jessica's reaction. She'd stolen my identity, damaged my relationships with family members, and was now trying to force me into unpaid childcare duty. The time for diplomatic solutions had passed. I spent my lunch break visiting each family member Jessica had defrauded, bringing documentation and explanations. The conversations were painful, but necessary. Aunt Margaret cried. Uncle Robert got angry, not at me, but at Jessica for putting us all in this position. Cousin David wanted to know if I was going to press charges. "I don't know yet," I told him. "First, I want to see if she'll take responsibility for what she's done and make restitution. But if she doubles down on the lies, then you'll have to treat her like any other criminal." The thought made me sad, but David was right. Jessica wasn't just a thoughtless sister anymore. She was someone who'd committed identity theft fraud and now harassment. If she were anyone else, I wouldn't hesitate to involve law enforcement. I returned to work that afternoon with a strange sense of purpose. My coworkers noticed the change in my demeanor. "You seem different today," said my project manager, Steve. "More focused." "I'm dealing with a family situation that's been going on for years. I think I finally figured out how to handle it." "Good for you. Family stuff can be the hardest to navigate." As 5 o'clock approached, I prepared to leave the office. Jessica would probably arrive around 7 or 8 p.m., expecting to hand off her children and rush to the airport. Instead, she'd find herself locked out of my building with nowhere to go. I felt a momentary pang of guilt about Chloe Mason and Riley. They were innocent victims in this drama, kids who deserved better than parents who used them as manipulation tools. But enabling Jessica's behavior wasn't helping them either. If anything, it was teaching them that boundaries didn't matter and that family members existed to be exploited. No. Tonight, Jessica was going to learn that I wasn't her backup plan anymore. And whatever happened next, she'd have to face the consequences of her choices without using me as her safety net. The confrontation was coming, and for the first time in my life, I was ready for it. I positioned myself by my living room window at 7:30 p.m., nursing a cup of coffee and watching the street below. My building sat on a busy corner in downtown Chicago, and from 12 stories up, the evening traffic looked like a stream of moving lights. I'd connected my phone to the building's intercom system, so I could hear whatever conversation happened in the lobby without having to go downstairs. At exactly 8:17 p.m., Jessica's white Chevy Suburban pulled up to the curb. Even from my vantage point, I could see the vehicle was packed. The rear storage area was crammed with suitcases, and I counted at least 4 large pieces of luggage stacked in the back seat. Jessica climbed out first, wearing a new sundress I'd never seen before, and designer sandals that probably cost more than most people's car payments. She'd clearly been shopping for her Bora Bora wardrobe, using the money she'd fraudulently obtained from our family. Then the kids emerged. 12-year-old Mason looked confused and tired, glancing around the busy street with obvious uncertainty. 9-year-old Chloe was practically bouncing with excitement, clearly thinking this was a fun surprise visit to Uncle Phoenix's apartment. 6-year-old Riley clutched a stuffed elephant, looking sleepy and overwhelmed by the bright city lights. My heart clenched watching them. Whatever happened tonight, these children were going to be hurt by their mother's deception. But the alternative, enabling Jessica's manipulation, would hurt them even more in the long run. Jessica began unloading suitcases with the efficient determination of someone who'd planned this moment carefully. 2 large rolling bags clearly packed for a 2-week stay, a duffel bag stuffed with what looked like toys and entertainment, a smaller case that probably contained toiletries and medications. She'd thought of everything except asking permission. The family approached my building's entrance, Jessica confidently leading the way, while the children struggled to keep up with their luggage. I watched her press the intercom button for my apartment. "Good evening," Carlos's professional voice came through my phone speaker. "How can I help you?" "Hi there. I'm Jessica Morrison Phoenix's sister. I'm here to drop off my kids for a visit." "I see. And Mr. Phoenix is expecting you?" There was a pause. I could picture Jessica's expression, the slight narrowing of her eyes that always preceded her manipulation tactics. "Of course he's expecting us. Look, I'm running late for a flight. Could you just buzz us up?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I'll need to verify with Mr. Phoenix first. Building policy requires confirmation for all visitors." "That's ridiculous. I'm family. Here, call him yourself." I heard the sound of Carlos dialing my extension, which I didn't answer. After several rings, he spoke to Jessica again. "Mr. Phoenix doesn't appear to be available. I'm afraid I can't grant access without his authorization." "Listen, my mother has a spare key to his apartment, Patricia Morrison. She gave me permission to use it." "Ma'am, having a spare key doesn't authorize building access. Our security protocols require direct permission from the resident or someone specifically listed as an authorized contact." Jessica's voice got sharper. "Are you serious right now? I have 3 children here. My flight leaves in 2 hours. This is an emergency. If this is an emergency, ma'am, I'd be happy to call emergency services for you. I could hear the tension escalating in Jessica's voice. No, don't call anyone. Just let me speak to your manager. The building manager isn't available after hours, but I can provide information about nearby hotels if you need accommodation for the evening. That's when I heard Chloe's small voice. Mom, why can't we go up to Uncle Phoenix's apartment? And Mason, sounding older than his 12 years, Mom, did Uncle Phoenix actually say we could visit? My heart broke, listening to the children's growing confusion. Jessica had clearly told them this was a planned visit, not an ambush. Kids, stay quiet. The adults are talking. But Mom. Riley's sleepy voice joined in. I thought Uncle Phoenix was going to make us pancakes like last time. He will, sweetie. There's just some confusion with the doorman. Mrs. Morrison. Carlos said gently. Perhaps you could call Mr. Phoenix directly to clarify the arrangement. His phone is broken, Jessica said quickly. That's why we couldn't coordinate timing. I almost laughed at the absurdity of the lie. My phone wasn't broken. She just knew I wouldn't answer her calls. Mom. Mason's voice was getting more insistent. Something's wrong here. Why won't Uncle Phoenix answer his phone? Why didn't he tell the doorman we were coming? Mason, I said, be quiet. No, Mom. You told us Uncle Phoenix invited us for 2 weeks. You said he was excited to spend time with us, but he's not answering his phone, and the doorman doesn't know about us visiting. Out of the mouths of babes. Mason was putting together the pieces that Jessica had hoped to keep hidden. Ma'am. Carlos continued with professional patience. I understand this is frustrating, but I have clear instructions regarding unauthorized visitors. I can certainly call a taxi for you, or provide directions to several family-friendly hotels in the area. I'm not going to a hotel. This is my brother's building. These are his nieces and nephew. We have every right to be here. Actually, ma'am, as a private building, we have the right to refuse entry to anyone not explicitly authorized by residents. Would you like me to call building security to escort you to your vehicle? The threat of security seemed to penetrate Jessica's anger. I heard her take a deep breath. Fine, kids, get back in the car. But Mom. Chloe's voice was small and disappointed. I wanted to see Uncle Phoenix. We will, honey. There's just some mix-up we need to sort out first. Mom. Mason said quietly, did you lie to us about this visit? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I found myself holding my breath, waiting for Jessica's response. Of course I didn't lie, Mason. Sometimes adults have to handle complicated situations that kids don't understand. That's not an answer, Mason replied with startling maturity. That's what you always say when you don't want to tell us the truth. I could hear Jessica's control starting to fracture. Her voice became higher, more strained. Get in the car, now, all of you. Ma'am, Carlos added helpfully. There's a Marriott Courtyard about 6 blocks west. That's very accommodating to families. We're not going to a hotel. Then perhaps you could contact Mr. Phoenix's mother, since you mentioned she has a spare key. Maybe she could provide alternative accommodation. Jessica seemed to realize she was trapped. If she called Mom, she'd have to explain why I wasn't answering my door or phone. If she went to a hotel, she'd miss her flight and lose the vacation she'd fraudulently financed. Mom. Riley's voice was getting tearful. I want to go home. I don't like it here. We can't go home, baby. Mommy and Daddy have to go on a trip. Then why can't we stay with Grandma Patricia like we usually do? Another excellent question from a 6-year-old. Jessica had always used Mom as her primary babysitter. The only reason she'd chosen my apartment was convenience to the airport. Because Uncle Phoenix specifically wanted to spend time with you guys. But he's not here, Chloe pointed out logically. And he doesn't know we're coming, Mason added. And the doorman won't let us up, Riley concluded. 3 children under 12 had just systematically dismantled Jessica's entire story. I felt proud of their logical thinking and heartbroken by their disappointment. Ma'am, Carlos said gently, your children seem confused about the arrangements. Perhaps this would be a good time to contact other family members who might be able to help. Jessica's silence stretched long enough that I wondered if she'd given up. Then, I heard her voice smaller and more desperate than before. Kids, get back in the car. We need to call Grandma Patricia. The sounds of car doors slamming came through the intercom, and I watched from my window as Jessica's Suburban pulled away from the curb. But I knew this wasn't over. Jessica didn't give up easily, and she had nowhere else to go. My phone rang 15 minutes later. Mom's number. It was time for round 2. I let Mom's call go to voicemail, then played the message while watching Jessica's SUV circle the block for the 3rd time. Her voice sounded strained and confused. Phoenix honey, Jessica called me in tears. She says you're not answering your door, and the doorman won't let the kids up to your apartment. There's clearly been some miscommunication here. Please call me back so we can sort this out. Those poor children are exhausted. Poor children indeed. But whose fault was that? 20 minutes later, I watched a familiar silver Honda Civic pull up behind Jessica's Suburban. Mom had arrived. Patricia Morrison climbed out of her car with the purposeful stride of someone accustomed to cleaning up her daughter's messes. She was 68 years old, recently retired from teaching elementary school, and had spent decades perfecting the art of diplomatic problem-solving. I connected my phone to the intercom system again, anticipating the conversation that was about to unfold in my lobby. Sure enough, both vehicles emptied their passengers. Mom approached Jessica and the children with open arms, immediately kneeling down to Riley's level. "Grandma," the kids chorused, and I could see their relief even from 12 stories above. "Hello, my darlings. What's all this confusion about?" "Mom told us Uncle Phoenix invited us to stay for 2 weeks," Mason explained with the precision of a court witness. "But Uncle Phoenix isn't home, and the doorman says he doesn't know anything about us visiting." Mom straightened slowly, and I watched her turn to face Jessica. Even from my distant vantage point, I could see the tension in her posture. The group moved into my building's lobby, and I heard Carlos greet them professionally. "Good evening, Mrs. Morrison." Mom had lived in our Milwaukee suburb for 40 years and knew everyone. Apparently, that included building doormen in downtown Chicago. "Hello, Carlos. I understand there's been some confusion about my son's visitors." "Yes, ma'am. Your daughter arrived claiming to have permission to visit Mr. Phoenix's apartment, but he hasn't authorized any visitors tonight, and he's not responding to calls." "Phoenix." Mom called toward the intercom. "If you can hear this, please come down so we can sort this out like adults." I took a deep breath and keyed the intercom microphone. "Hi, Mom. I can hear you perfectly." "Then why won't you let your sister and these children up to your apartment? They've been driving for over an hour." "Because I never agreed to babysit for 2 weeks. Jessica informed me she was dropping them off. She didn't ask permission." I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath through the speaker. "Phoenix, surely you're not going to abandon family over a miscommunication?" "Mom, let me ask you something. Did Jessica tell you she borrowed $800 from Aunt Margaret last month, claiming it was for my medical emergency?" The silence in the lobby was deafening. "What medical emergency?" Mom's voice was careful, confused. "Exactly. There was no medical emergency. Jessica lied to Aunt Margaret, used my name to borrow money, and spent it on her Bora Bora vacation fund." That can't be right." "She also borrowed $600 from Cousin David for my fake car repairs, $400 from Uncle Robert for my fake rent problems, and $500 from Great Aunt Susan for my fake medical bills. In total, she's fraudulently obtained almost $3,000 using my identity." I could hear Jessica's voice sharp and defensive. "That's not true. Phoenix is lying." "Carlos," I said calmly, "would you mind putting this conversation on speaker? I want everyone to hear this clearly." "Of course, Mr. Phoenix." "Jessica, are you claiming you didn't borrow money from our relatives?" I borrowed money, but not for vacation. We had legitimate expenses." "What legitimate expenses required you to lie about my medical condition?" "I didn't lie. I I simplified the situation. You told Aunt Margaret I was in the hospital. You could have been, you work too much. You never exercise. You eat nothing but takeout. Mom's voice cut through Jessica's deflection. Jessica Ann Morrison, did you or did you not tell your aunt that Phoenix needed money for medical bills? The pause stretched so long I thought Jessica might not answer. I told her Phoenix needed help, which he does. Look how he's acting right now. That's not what I asked. Mom's teacher voice was emerging the tone that had intimidated thousands of elementary students over 4 decades. Did you specifically tell Margaret that Phoenix had medical bills he couldn't pay? I may have mentioned medical concerns while borrowing money in his name. Mom, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. Brian lost overtime at work. The kids need new school clothes. The house needs repairs. I was desperate. Then why didn't you ask for help honestly, instead of lying about Phoenix? Because everyone thinks Phoenix is so responsible with money. If I said I needed help, they'd lecture me about budgeting. But if Phoenix needed help, they'd give it without questions. The truth was finally emerging, and it was uglier than I'd imagined. Jessica hadn't just stolen money. She deliberately exploited my reputation for responsibility to manipulate our family. Jessica. I said through the intercom, what you're describing is identity theft. Using someone else's name and reputation to obtain money under false pretenses is fraud. You're my brother. Brothers help each other. Brothers who ask for help and tell the truth. Not brothers who steal identities and dump children without permission. Mom's voice was getting stronger, more authoritative. Jessica, I need you to be completely honest with me. Did Phoenix agree to watch the children tonight? We discussed it. That's not what I asked. Did Phoenix specifically agree to watch Chloe Mason and Riley for 2 weeks, while you vacation in Bora Bora? The children's voices erupted simultaneously. 2 weeks from Mason. Bora Bora from Chloe. Vacation from Riley. Mom. Chloe's voice was small and hurt. You said Daddy surprised you with a weekend trip to visit his sister. My heart sank. Jessica had lied to her own children about the nature and duration of her trip. Chloe, honey, it's complicated. No, it's not. Mason's voice was getting angry. You lied to us about everything. You said Uncle Phoenix invited us. You said it was only for the weekend. You said Daddy's sister was expecting us. Mason, you don't understand adult situations. I understand lying, the 12-year-old replied with devastating precision. You lied to Uncle Phoenix. You lied to Grandma, you lied to us, and you lied to all those relatives to steal money. Out of the mouths of babes. Mom's voice was heavy with disappointment. Phoenix, I owe you an enormous apology. I had no idea Jessica had been using your name to borrow money, and I certainly didn't know she was planning to drop the children off without your consent. Thank you, Mom. I appreciate that. Jessica. Mom continued, you will return every penny you borrowed under false pretenses. You will apologize personally to every family member you deceived. And you will explain to your children why lying and manipulation are unacceptable, regardless of financial pressure. Mom, you don't understand. I'll miss my flight. We'll lose the deposit on the trip. Then, you'll lose the deposit. Actions have consequences, Jessica. You can't lie and steal your way to a vacation and expect family to enable it. I heard Carlos clear his throat diplomatically. Mrs. Morrison, if I may suggest, there are several hotels within walking distance that could accommodate your daughter and grandchildren for the night. That won't be necessary, Mom said firmly. The children will come home with me tonight. Jessica can figure out her own arrangements. I can't afford a hotel. Jessica's voice was getting shrill. I spent everything on the trip deposits. Money you obtained by lying, Mom reminded her. Perhaps this is a good opportunity to learn about consequences. I listened to my mother, the same woman who'd spent decades enabling Jessica's behavior, finally drawing a line in the sand. It was stunning and gratifying and heartbreaking all at once. Mrs. Morrison, I said through the intercom, Would you like to bring the kids up to say hello? I'd love to see them, even if I can't babysit for 2 weeks. That's very generous, Phoenix. Kids, would you like to visit Uncle Phoenix for a few minutes before we go to Grandma's house? The enthusiastic chorus of yes from all 3 children made me smile for the first time that evening. Whatever else happened tonight, at least I'd get to hug my nieces and nephew and reassure them that Uncle Phoenix still loved them, even when their mother made poor choices. But as I headed down to the lobby, I suspected Jessica wasn't done fighting yet. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from unknown numbers and a social media notification that made my blood run cold. Jessica had posted a 2,000-word Facebook rant titled, "When Family Abandons You, A Sister's Heartbreak." The post was a masterpiece of manipulation, painting me as a heartless uncle who'd abandoned his sister's children in their time of need. According to Jessica's version of events, she'd been forced to choose between her marriage and her family when Brian surprised her with a once-in-a-lifetime anniversary trip. She'd humbly asked her successful brother for help, only to be cruelly rejected, despite her desperate circumstances. The post had been shared 43 times in 12 hours and had accumulated over 200 comments, mostly from people I didn't know expressing outrage at my selfishness. Jessica had tagged me in the post, ensuring my name was attached to her fictional narrative. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker Steve. "Dude, what's this Facebook drama with your sister? People are calling the office, asking about your character." My stomach dropped. Jessica had escalated beyond family manipulation into public character assassination. I quickly called my boss, Mr. Patterson, before he could hear about this secondhand. "Phoenix, I was just about to call you. We've had some unusual inquiries this morning about your personal situation. Mr. Patterson, my sister posted false information on social media about a family disagreement. I wanted to give you the facts before this gets out of hand." I spent 20 minutes explaining the situation, emphasizing the identity theft and unauthorized childcare demands. Mr. Patterson listened without interrupting. "Phoenix, in 5 years, you've never missed a deadline, never caused workplace drama, and never given me reason to question your character. I'm not concerned about family gossip, but I am concerned about your well-being. Are you handling this situation safely?" "I think so, sir, but I wanted you to know in case clients or vendors contact you." "Understood. Take whatever time you need to resolve this." After hanging up, I realized Jessica's public campaign was just beginning. By noon, she'd posted Instagram stories showing her packing the kids' belongings sadly, while dramatic music played in the background. She'd created a GoFundMe page titled, "Help a Single Mom Rebuild After Family Rejection," that somehow failed to mention her upcoming Bora Bora vacation or her husband's steady employment. But Jessica's strategy contained the seeds of its own destruction. Her stories weren't consistent across platforms, and our extended family was starting to compare notes. My phone rang around 1 p.m. Aunt Margaret's voice was cold with fury. "Phoenix, I just read your sister's Facebook post. She's claiming you refused to help with childcare during a family emergency. But yesterday, you told me she used your name to borrow money from me under false pretenses. Which story is true?" "The one I told you yesterday, Aunt Margaret. There's no family emergency. Jessica manipulated multiple family members to finance a vacation, then tried to dump her children on me without permission." "I see. And does she mention in her Facebook post that she borrowed money from family using your identity?" "She doesn't mention the borrowed money at all." "How very convenient. Phoenix, I've been calling other family members today. Your sister owes money to at least 6 relatives, all borrowed using your name and false emergencies. We're planning to confront her together." "Aunt Margaret, I appreciate the support, but be careful. Jessica doesn't handle confrontation well." "Neither do I, dear. Neither do I." The family confrontation Margaret organized happened that evening via conference call. I participated from my apartment, while relatives from Milwaukee to Minneapolis joined the conversation. Jessica, cornered and defensive, initially tried to maintain her victim narrative. "I don't understand why everyone is attacking me, when I'm going through such a difficult time. Uncle Robert's voice cut through her self-pity. Jessica, you told me Phoenix needed $400 for car repairs. Phoenix tells me his car is fine, and he never asked for money. One of you is lying, and I know which one. Maybe Phoenix forgot he asked me to borrow money for him. I don't forget borrowing money from family, I interjected calmly. Cousin David joined in. Jessica, you told me Phoenix was behind on rent because his company had cut his hours. I called Phoenix's office today. He's working overtime, not reduced hours. You called his office, that's harassment. No checking the truth of your stories is due diligence. And your stories are lies. One by one, each relative shared their experience with Jessica's deception. The pattern was identical false emergency, involving me, urgent need for money, promises to have Phoenix pay them back soon. Great Aunt Susan delivered the most devastating blow. Jessica, I've known Phoenix since he was born. He would never borrow money from a 90-year-old woman and leave her wondering where her grocery money went for 3 months. But you let me worry about that money while you planned a vacation. I was going to pay you back? With what money? You don't have a savings account. You don't have stable income. You borrowed from 6 family members using Phoenix's identity, which means you never intended to pay any of us back. Mom's voice was heavy with disappointment. Jessica, I've enabled your behavior for too long. I thought I was helping you by making excuses and providing support. Instead, I taught you that lying and manipulation were acceptable as long as you cried hard enough afterward. Mom, I can't believe you're taking Phoenix's side over your own daughter's. I'm not taking sides. I'm facing facts. You committed fraud using your brother's identity. You attempted to abandon your children without permission. You lied to your own kids about the nature of your trip. These aren't matters of opinion. The call ended, with Jessica hanging up after screaming that we were all heartless and didn't understand real struggle. But the damage was done. Her public narrative had crumbled under the weight of documented lies, and our family had finally seen her manipulation tactics clearly. Later that evening, I received an unexpected text from Brian, Jessica's husband. Phoenix, I'm in Bora Bora, and just saw Jessica's social media posts. I had no idea she'd planned to dump the kids on you without asking. I thought your mom was babysitting like always. Can you call me? The international call was expensive, but Brian's confusion was genuine. Phoenix, Jessica told me she'd arranged childcare with family. I assumed that meant your mother, like every other trip we've taken. I never would have agreed to this vacation if I'd known she was planning to force you into babysitting. Brian, were you aware Jessica borrowed money from our relatives using my name? What? No, absolutely not. What are you talking about? I explained the fraud scheme, and Brian's shock seemed authentic. Phoenix, I swear I didn't know. Jessica handles all our finances because I travel for work. She told me she'd saved money for this trip. She did save money. Money she obtained by lying to our family. Brian was quiet for a long time. I need to come home. This isn't the woman I married. This isn't the mother my children deserve. Brian, I'm not trying to destroy your marriage, but these patterns have been escalating for years. I know. I've been making excuses for her just like your mother did. But lying to family and abandoning our kids, that's not financial stress. That's character failure. After we hung up, I realized something important had happened. For the first time in years, Jessica was facing consequences for her actions without anyone rushing to enable her. No family member was offering to bail her out. No one was making excuses for her behavior. She was finally experiencing the natural results of her choices. But I suspected she had one more desperate play left. And I was right. Sunday morning at 6:15 a.m., my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, and voicemails all marked urgent. My heart rate spiked as I grabbed the phone, expecting bad news about one of the kids. The first text from Jessica made my blood turn to ice. Riley in ER. Severe allergic reaction. Need you here now. The second text was even more panicked. She can't breathe properly. Doctors asking about family medical history. Where are you? I was dressed, and in my car within minutes, driving toward Milwaukee General Hospital with my hands shaking. Whatever issues I had with Jessica Riley was innocent. If something had happened to my 6-year-old niece, because of our family conflict, I'd never forgive myself. The 40-minute drive felt like hours. I called Jessica's phone repeatedly, but she didn't answer. I tried Brian's international number, but it went straight to voicemail. By the time I reached the hospital, I was imagining worst-case scenarios involving ventilators and intensive care. I rushed to the pediatric emergency department and found Jessica in the waiting area looking appropriately distraught. She was still wearing yesterday's clothes, her hair unwashed, and her eyes red from crying. "Phoenix, thank God you're here. They won't tell me anything more until family arrives." "Where is she? What happened?" "They think it might be a reaction to something she ate. Her breathing became labored around midnight, and she started breaking out in hives. I've been here all night." I followed Jessica toward the patient rooms, my heart pounding with worry. But when we reached Riley's bedside, I stopped short. My niece was sitting up in bed, coloring in an activity book, looking perfectly healthy, except for some minor red splotches on her arms that looked more like mosquito bites than allergic hives. "Uncle Phoenix." Riley smiled brightly and reached for a hug. Her breathing was completely normal. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you feeling?" "I'm okay. My tummy hurt a little bit, but the nice doctor gave me medicine that tasted like bubblegum." I looked around the room confused. This didn't look like the severe allergic reaction Jessica had described. Riley seemed alert, comfortable, and completely unbothered by her supposed medical emergency. A moment later, Dr. Martinez entered the room carrying a clipboard. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and the tired expression of someone who'd worked a long night shift. "Mr. Phoenix Morrison, I'm Riley's uncle." "Ah, excellent. I understand you're concerned about Riley's condition. My sister said she was having a severe allergic reaction and couldn't breathe properly." Dr. Martinez glanced at Jessica, then back at me. "I think there may have been some miscommunication. Riley came in around midnight with mild stomach upset and a few hives on her arms. We determined she had a minor reaction to some gas station snacks she'd eaten earlier. Nothing serious, and certainly nothing that threatened her breathing." I stared at Jessica, who suddenly seemed unable to meet my eyes. "Doctor, my sister told me this was a severe allergic reaction that required family medical history." We did ask about family allergies as standard protocol, but Riley's reaction was very mild. We gave her some antihistamine and observed her for a few hours to be safe. She's been ready for discharge since about 4 a.m. 4 a.m. It's now almost 8 a.m. Dr. Martinez looked puzzled. "Yes, we've been waiting for someone to pick her up. The mother said she was waiting for family to arrive before leaving." I turned to Jessica, understanding dawning like a cold sunrise. "You've been keeping Riley here for 4 hours after she was cleared to leave." I wanted to make sure she was completely okay. "Mrs. Morrison," Dr. Martinez said carefully, "you insisted we keep Riley under observation despite our assurance that she was fine. You also repeatedly asked us to contact family members about her condition, even though we explained it wasn't necessary for such a minor issue." Riley piped up cheerfully. "Mommy told me to cough extra hard when the doctor was listening to my breathing. She said it would help him know how sick I was." The room fell silent. Dr. Martinez's expression shifted from puzzled to concerned. "Mrs. Morrison, did you coach your daughter to exaggerate symptoms?" No, of course not." Riley misunderstood. "I did not misunderstand," Riley said with 6-year-old indignation. "You told me to cough really loud so the doctors would know I needed help." Dr. Martinez stepped closer to Jessica. "Ma'am, instructing a child to fake or exaggerate medical symptoms is a serious matter. Are you having some kind of crisis that's affecting your judgment?" I watched Jessica's face cycle through emotions, panic, calculation, desperation, and finally the familiar tearful manipulation that had worked on our family for decades. "Doctor, You don't understand the stress I'm under. My family has abandoned me during the worst time of my life. I'm a single mother trying to care for 3 children with no support system. Ma'am, you're not a single mother. Your husband called here an hour ago from Bora Bora asking about Riley's condition, and this gentleman appears to be offering support right now. Jessica's lie had unraveled in real time. Phoenix. She turned to me with desperate eyes. You know how hard things have been for me. I just needed family to understand how serious this was. Jessica, there was nothing serious about this. You fabricated a medical emergency to manipulate me into coming here. I didn't fabricate anything. Riley was sick. She had an upset stomach from gas station candy. You turned it into a fake breathing emergency to guilt me into compliance. Dr. Martinez was writing notes on his clipboard. I'm required to document when parents instruct children to exaggerate symptoms. This could be considered a form of medical abuse. Medical abuse. Jessica's voice shot up an octave. That's ridiculous. Mrs. Morrison, using your child's minor illness to manipulate family members and emergency services, wastes resources, and puts your daughter in an inappropriate position. I'm going to recommend a follow-up with social services. Social services. You can't be serious. A woman in scrubs entered the room. Mrs. Morrison, I'm Lisa Chen, the hospital social worker. Dr. Martinez asked me to speak with you about Riley's care. I watched Jessica's panic escalate as she realized the consequences of her manipulation were spiraling beyond her control. She'd used her own daughter as a prop in her emotional blackmail scheme, and now professional authorities were taking notice. Ma'am, Mrs. Chen said gently, can you help me understand why you kept Riley here for 4 hours after she was cleared for discharge? I was worried about her. I'm her mother. But you also instructed her to exaggerate symptoms for medical staff. That suggests other motivations. Riley looked up from her coloring book. Mommy was really mad at Uncle Phoenix. She said if he saw how sick I was, he'd stop being mean to our family. Out of the mouths of babes, again. Mrs. Chen made notes while speaking calmly. Mrs. Morrison using a child's medical situation to influence family relationships is concerning. Combined with coaching her to exaggerate symptoms, this suggests some judgment issues we need to address. I pulled Mrs. Chen aside. Ma'am, there's a larger pattern here involving financial fraud and attempted child abandonment. My sister is facing consequences for her choices and appears to be escalating her manipulation tactics. Can you provide documentation of these other incidents? I showed her my phone, which contained screenshots of Jessica's social media posts, text messages about the unauthorized babysitting, and family members' testimonies about the identity theft. Mrs. Chen's expression grew more serious as she reviewed the evidence. Mr. Morrison, your sister appears to be using her children as tools for emotional manipulation. This is a form of psychological abuse, even if she doesn't recognize it. An hour later, I left the hospital with mixed emotions. Riley was healthy and happy, but Jessica was facing a social services investigation and mandatory counseling before she could regain unsupervised custody of her children. Brian had been contacted in Bora Bora and was flying home immediately. Mom was picking up all 3 kids for an extended stay while the adults sorted out their issues. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed our family. For the first time in my life, I felt strong enough to respond truthfully. I didn't destroy anything. I stopped enabling your destruction of yourself and everyone around you. That's what love actually looks like. She didn't text back. The hardest part was over, but the real work was just beginning. 3 months later, I sat in my living room watching the sunset over Lake Michigan, reflecting on how dramatically my life had changed. The view from my windows remained the same, but everything else was different. Jessica had completed 8 weeks of intensive therapy, as required by the family court. Dr. Williams, the therapist, specialized in manipulation disorders and family dysfunction. According to Brian, who I now spoke with regularly, the sessions had been brutal but necessary. She fought it at first, Brian had told me during our last phone call. Dr. Williams doesn't accept excuses or victim narratives. Jessica had to face the fact that she'd been psychologically abusing everyone around her for years, including her own children. The financial restitution had been equally important. Jessica had repaid every family member she'd defrauded, working extra bookkeeping jobs, and selling personal items to cover the debt. It took her 2 months, but every penny had been returned with written apologies. More importantly, she'd learned to take responsibility for her choices. The old Jessica would have blamed me for overreacting or claimed the family was ganging up on her. The Jessica who emerged from therapy acknowledged that identity theft, child abandonment, and medical manipulation were serious violations that hurt everyone involved. Brian had also done individual counseling to address his role as an enabler. "I thought I was being a supportive husband by not questioning her stories," he'd explained. "But really, I was teaching her that lying was acceptable, as long as it didn't directly affect me." Their marriage had survived, but it looked very different now. Brian actively participated in household finances, instead of delegating everything to Jessica. They'd established spending limits that required mutual approval. Most importantly, Jessica could no longer make unilateral decisions that affected their children or extended family. The kids had thrived throughout the process. Mason at 12 had shown remarkable emotional intelligence during his own therapy sessions. "I knew Mom wasn't telling the truth about lots of things," he'd told Dr. Williams. "But I didn't know it was okay to say that." Chloe had struggled more with the concept of parental fallibility. "I thought moms and dads always told the truth," she'd said during a family session I'd attended via video call. Dr. Williams had helped her understand that adults make mistakes, but can learn and grow from them. Riley, being 6, had adapted most easily. Her primary concern was whether Uncle Phoenix was still mad at Mommy. I'd assured her that Uncle Phoenix loved everyone in the family even when adults made poor choices. My relationship with Mom had undergone the most profound transformation. Patricia had enrolled in her own therapy to address decades of enabling behavior. "I thought I was protecting Jessica by making excuses for her," she'd admitted to me over lunch last week. "Instead, I was preventing her from learning how to be a decent person." Mom's newfound commitment to healthy boundaries had surprised everyone. When Jessica tried to manipulate her way out of therapy early, Mom had firmly refused to provide childcare until the counseling was complete. When Jessica complained about the cost of restitution, Mom had offered emotional support, but not financial assistance. "I spent 35 years teaching Jessica that tears and drama could solve any problem," Mom had said. "It's taken me months of therapy to learn how to love her without enabling her destruction." The extended family had also benefited from the crisis. Aunt Margaret had started a family group chat where everyone shared financial requests transparently, instead of dealing with individual manipulation. Uncle Robert had installed caller ID specifically to avoid Jessica's future schemes. Cousin David had established a family policy requiring written loan agreements for any financial assistance. But the most important change was in Jessica herself. 2 weeks ago, she'd called me with something I'd never heard from her before: a genuine apology. "Phoenix, I need to say something I should have said months ago. I'm sorry. Not sorry that I got caught. Not sorry that there were consequences, but actually sorry for the damage I caused. I used your identity to steal money from our family. I tried to abandon my children at your apartment without permission. I coached Riley to fake medical symptoms to manipulate you. Every single one of those actions was wrong, regardless of whatever stress I was feeling." The apology had continued for 20 minutes, detailing specific incidents going back to our childhood. Jessica acknowledged stealing my birthday money when we were kids. She apologized for sabotaging my relationship with Amanda in college. She took responsibility for the years of boundary violations and financial manipulation. "I don't expect you to trust me immediately," she'd concluded. Dr. Williams says trust has to be rebuilt through consistent behavior over time. But I want you to know that I'm committed to being the sister and mother my family deserves. The proof had come through actions, not words. Jessica had gotten a full-time job, instead of relying on part-time work and manipulation. She'd established a savings account and was building an emergency fund. Most importantly, she'd started asking for help honestly when she needed it, instead of lying and stealing. Last month, when Chloe needed expensive dental work, Jessica had called me directly. "Phoenix, I know I have no right to ask for financial help given my history, but Chloe needs braces, and our insurance only covers half the cost. Would you be willing to discuss a formal loan with a payment plan?" The old me would have just given her the money to avoid conflict. The new me had offered a structured loan with written terms and monthly payments. Jessica had accepted gratefully and had already made 2 payments ahead of schedule. Our family gatherings looked different now, too. Instead of walking on eggshells around Jessica's moods, we had open conversations about problems. Instead of enabling poor choices, we offered accountability alongside support. Instead of individual manipulation, we made decisions collectively with transparency. The children had adapted beautifully to the new family dynamic. Mason had told me proudly that his mom now asked his opinion about family plans, instead of just announcing them. Chloe had shared that she no longer worried about her parents fighting about money because they discussed finances openly. Riley had simply said that family felt more honest now. My own life had improved dramatically. Work had become more productive without the constant stress of family crises. My relationship with Sarah, a woman I'd met through a coding meetup, was thriving, partly because I'd learned to establish healthy boundaries from the beginning. My apartment remained my sanctuary, but now it was protected by self-respect rather than locks and security guards. Most surprisingly, my relationship with Jessica had become closer than it had ever been. Without manipulation, poisoning every interaction, we discovered that we actually enjoyed each other's company. We shared similar humor and had more in common than I'd realized. The sister I'd known was largely a performance designed to extract resources and sympathy. The real Jessica was more interesting and far more likable. "I spent so much energy maintaining lies and managing schemes," she'd told me recently. "Being honest is actually easier. I just didn't know how to do it anymore." 3 weeks ago, Jessica had surprised me with an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner at her house. Not a demand, not a guilt trip, but a genuine invitation with no strings attached. "I'd love to cook for you," she'd said, as a small way of showing appreciation for forcing me to become a better person. I'd accepted, and the dinner had been wonderful. Brian had thanked me privately for intervening when he hadn't been strong enough to address Jessica's behavior. Mom had expressed gratitude for helping her learn to love without enabling. The kids had been relaxed and happy, no longer walking on eggshells around family dynamics. But perhaps the most meaningful moment had come when Jessica pulled me aside after dinner. "Phoenix, Dr. Williams helped me understand something important. I spent years resenting your success and stability, but I never asked myself why you had those things, and I didn't. The answer was simple. You made responsible choices and dealt with consequences honestly. I made selfish choices and tried to manipulate my way out of consequences. I was jealous of results I wasn't willing to work for." She'd paused, gathering her thoughts. "What you did 3 months ago wasn't cruel. It was the most loving thing anyone had ever done for me. You refused to enable my self-destruction even when it was emotionally difficult for you. You forced me to face the truth about who I'd become. That's what real family support looks like." As I reflected on the past 3 months from my living room tonight, I realized the most important lesson I'd learned. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for family is refuse to enable their worst behaviors. True love requires boundaries, and healthy relationships are built on respect, not manipulation. When you stop being a victim, you teach others to stop being victimizers. The family that emerges from honest confrontation is stronger than the one built on lies and convenience. Jessica's crisis had forced all of us to examine our roles in the dysfunction and choose growth over comfort. The children were learning that adults can make mistakes take responsibility, and change for the better. Mom had learned that protecting someone from consequences isn't actually protection. It's prevention of growth. Brian had learned that love requires engagement, not just acceptance. Jessica had learned that honesty is more sustainable than manipulation. And I had learned that standing up for myself didn't destroy my family, it saved it. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Phoenix. I know I don't say this enough, but thank you. For not enabling me. For forcing me to grow up. For believing I could be better, even when I didn't believe it myself. I'm grateful every day that you were strong enough to love me properly. I smiled and typed back, "You're welcome, and I'm proud of the woman and mother you've become." The response came immediately. "See you next week for Riley's school play." Wouldn't miss it. As I set down my phone and watched the lights come on across downtown Chicago, I felt something I'd never experienced before: complete peace with my family relationships. Not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. Not because there was no conflict, but because conflict could be addressed directly instead of through manipulation. The apartment that Jessica had once tried to invade was still my sanctuary, but now it was protected by mutual respect rather than changed locks. The sister who had once exploited my boundaries was now someone I trusted and enjoyed spending time with. The family that had once enabled dysfunction was now committed to health and growth. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the refusal to participate in their self-destruction. Sometimes love looks like saying no, even when it's hard. Sometimes protecting yourself is the first step toward protecting everyone you care about. If someone in your life is repeatedly crossing your boundaries and manipulating you into compliance, I want you to ask yourself this question: are you helping them by saying yes, or are you preventing them from learning how to be a better person? Have you ever had to set firm boundaries with a family member who was taking advantage of you? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself, and what was the outcome? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the strength to establish healthy boundaries in their own relationships. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding the courage to do what's right, even when it's difficult. And please share this with anyone who might be struggling with similar family manipulation. Sometimes knowing you're not alone is the first step toward change. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it encourages you to value yourself enough to demand respect from the people who claim to love you. Remember, healthy families are built on honesty and mutual respect, not guilt and manipulation. You deserve relationships that lift you up, not tear you down. Until next time, take care of yourselves and protect your peace.